It started with a phone call. The kind of call that makes your heart skip a beat before the words even register. A woman from the downtown community center introduced herself with a soft, hesitant voice. She said she was following up on a few concerns about deliveries made to the blind residents they care for. Spoiled produce, bad smells, mold, and receipts signed by someone named Olivia Kane. My Olivia. At first I blinked like I didn't hear her right. My hand clutched the phone tighter, but I felt the coldness seep into my skin. I asked, trying to keep my voice level. What kind of concerns? The woman paused. We don't want to jump to conclusions. It's just, several members of our blind senior community reported receiving poor quality fruit. And when we looked into it, the seller's name was listed as Olivia Kane. We thought perhaps you might know her. I should have lied. Should have said no, must be someone else. But the truth jumped out before I could swallow it. She's my daughter. The silence that followed on the line was enough to tell me everything I didn't want to believe. We just thought maybe you'd like to be aware, she said gently, like she was setting down a fragile object or a loaded bomb. I thanked her and hung up, but my hand stayed on the receiver long after the call ended. My other hand clutched my chest. Something fluttered inside me, disbelief, fear, shame, grief, all at once. It couldn't be true. My Olivia might be many things, bold, ambitious, even careless, but she wasn't cruel. She wasn't someone who would take advantage of the vulnerable. Was she? I sat in that chair staring out the window at the peach tree in my backyard. Its fruit was just starting to blush, not yet ready. I remembered Olivia as a child climbing that tree barefoot, coming down with sun-warmed peaches in her arms, juice dripping down her chin as she giggled. What happened to that child? By the time the sun set that evening, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't ask her, not yet. I needed to see for myself. The next morning, I walked into the community center like any other volunteer. No one questioned me. I'd helped here before years ago, before Olivia's business took off. Before she insisted she was too busy for things that didn't generate profit. I brought a tray of banana bread and offered to help with deliveries, just to get a feel for things. The center hadn't changed much. Same faded murals on the walls. Same worn benches, same mixture of love and exhaustion in the air. But the residents had changed. Older, frailer, a little more quiet than I remembered. In the dining room, I met Mr. Clark, a blind man with a strong grip and an even stronger spirit. He cracked jokes about his hearing being too good and told me I had a baker's soul after one bite of my bread. Then he mentioned offhandedly that Olivia Kane delivered fruit to him every Tuesday. She's such a lovely girl, he said. Always brings bananas. Not the freshest, but she's the only one who visits, so we don't mind. That sentence knifed through me. Not the freshest. He smiled with his cloudy eyes, unaware of how my insides were unraveling. I asked to see what was left from the last delivery. He showed me a bruised apple, 2 bananas with black spots, and a peach that was soft enough to collapse under my finger. I thanked him and stepped out into the hallway, my legs suddenly weak. I leaned against the wall, staring at the tray in my hands. My daughter's name was being spoken in rooms where trust should never be broken. Was she really doing this? I didn't want to believe it. But belief wasn't going to protect anyone. That night when Olivia came home, I didn't say a word. I watched her walk in with her big leather handbag and flashy heels phone to her ear, laughing about closing another easy deal. I watched her kiss me on the cheek distractedly, her lipstick leaving a faint mark I didn't bother wiping off. I followed her outside when she went to the car. She popped the trunk to get something out. That's when I saw it. 3 boxes of fruit. Spoiled, bruised, soft. Some had mold growing at the base. She pulled one apple out and muttered, "This'll pass if I wipe it." I couldn't breathe. "Olivia," I said. She jumped. "Jesus. Mom, don't sneak up like that." I pointed to the boxes. "Where is this going?" She shrugged. "Just some orders." "For who?" She rolled her eyes. "Blind people, okay? They don't care about aesthetics. I sell them cheaper produce. Everybody wins. No, Olivia, I said, voice trembling. Everybody doesn't win. You're feeding them rot. She closed the trunk. It's fruit, Mom. It's not poison. Don't make it dramatic. But it was poison. Maybe not in the flesh, but in the lie. In the erosion of trust. In what it said about who she'd become. That night I didn't sleep. Because I knew something for certain now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional. And it wasn't just about fruit. It was about something rotten in my own daughter that I hadn't seen grow. The next morning, I arrived back at the community center. But this time, I wasn't just visiting to pass out banana bread. This time I needed to know. I signed in with a smile and offered to help with produce distribution. The woman at the front desk, her name was Doreen, if I remembered right, looked grateful and said, "That would be wonderful. We've had some inconsistency with the deliveries. Clients have been politely quiet, but there have been murmurs." I followed her down the hallway carrying a clipboard and trying to mask the storm in my chest. The fruit cart was parked outside the kitchen. It was loaded with today's delivery. I didn't need to touch anything. The stench told me enough. Even through the plastic wrap, I could smell the sourness of overripe peaches, the sickly sweetness of rotting bananas, the dull ferment of old oranges. One box was already leaking juice. I peeked inside. A few apples had turned brown at the core, mush creeping outward like decay with a deadline. I fought the urge to gag. A staff member passed by and muttered, "Again," under her breath. She didn't know I heard her, but I did. And it told me this wasn't the first time. I leaned over and asked Doreen as gently as I could, "Who delivers the fruit?" She didn't look suspicious. She just sighed. "A young woman named Olivia. She's very confident. Brought her business card a few months ago. She says she runs her own produce collection and delivery service. We wanted to support local youth. You know how it is. Support. Yes. That's the word predators often cloak themselves in." I nodded. "Do you check the quality?" Her smile faltered. "Well, we trust that the suppliers have standards. We're understaffed. We try to inspect, but..." Her voice trailed off like she knew it was no longer an excuse. I offered to help sort the produce that day, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know the extent of it. Every box I opened told me another layer of the truth. This wasn't neglect. It was selection. The fruit wasn't randomly spoiled. It was all the fruit that wouldn't sell to the sighted. The bruises were on the outside. Mold clustered just where a person with sight would notice. One orange looked fine until I turned it over and saw the black mildew ring blooming around its underside. She knew exactly what she was doing. That night, back at home, Olivia was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone and laughing to herself while eating instant noodles. Her shoes were kicked off her feet up on the table, oblivious to the destruction trailing behind her. "Any deliveries today?" I asked, testing her. She shrugged. "Yeah, the usual place." "Did they like the fruit?" "They always like it, Mom." She didn't even look up. "They're blind. It's not like they're gonna leave a Yelp review." I couldn't breathe. "You know they trust you," I said quietly. She finally looked at me, her tone defensive. "I give them something no one else does: attention. I show up. I smile. I talk to them. So what if the bananas are soft? They're old, Mom. They just want someone to care." "But it's not care. It's manipulation. It's sales," she snapped. "Something you wouldn't understand." "I worked in grocery for 30 years, I said. "I know what bad fruit looks like. And I know what a rotten deal smells like, Olivia." She pushed back from the table. "You don't know anything. You never had ambition. You played safe your whole life. And now you think you get to judge me." "I'm not judging," I said, though. My voice was cracking. "I'm mourning." She laughed dry and sharp. "God, you're dramatic." But I saw something behind her eyes, a flicker, small but real. Guilt. No, not quite. It was fear. She knew I had seen too much. When she left to go meet her friends later that night, I opened her laptop. It wasn't locked, and what I saw made my stomach twist. Spreadsheets, handwritten invoices scanned in, transactions labeled center run, blind drop, old batch unload, cash intake, No taxes, no refunds, no traceable delivery notes. But it was the images folder that made me stop breathing. Photos of fruit that was obviously rotten, time-stamped, then followed by pictures of her smiling with blind residents holding those same fruit bags. She had documented it like a trophy. Why? To brag to protect herself? Or just because she thought no one would care? I downloaded everything onto a USB drive and put it in my old recipe tin, the one she never touched. Then I shut the laptop and walked outside into the backyard. The peaches on my tree were starting to fall early this year. Some of them had bruises, some were still whole. I picked one up, turned it over in my hand, and just stood there staring at the skin, soft in one patch, perfect in another. Sometimes you can't tell what's spoiled until you really feel beneath the surface. I sat down on the porch swing and closed my eyes. What do you do when your own child becomes the villain in someone else's life? What do you do when you realize you raised her to be smart, but not to be kind? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew this tomorrow I would go back to the center. And I would start listening to the people she thought couldn't see her, the people who had no vision but more truth in their hearts than my own daughter had in her entire business plan. The next morning, I stood in front of the community center again, but something in me had changed. This wasn't just about observing anymore. This was about witnessing. And the more I saw, the more I realized how deeply my daughter's actions had cut into a place that depended on trust to survive. Inside, I found Mr. Clark again. He was sitting on a worn bench near the window, humming softly and peeling an orange, or trying to. His hands trembled slightly as he struggled to get past the soft, mushy rind. The peel crumbled more than it separated. I sat beside him and gently took the orange from his hands. I finished peeling it and handed back the segments. He smiled, unaware of the tears I was swallowing. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said. "How often do they give you these deliveries?" I asked. "Oh, once or twice a week. Depends." He bit into a slice and winced. "This one tastes strange." "You don't have to eat it," I said gently. He shook his head. "I don't want her to think we're ungrateful." Her, the young girl, Olivia. She's sweet. Sometimes she even reads the fruit labels out loud like she's on the radio. He laughed softly. "Even if the fruit's not always good, at least she comes." That broke me. Even when they suspected, they still clung to the gesture of care, because it was all they had. It wasn't just the fruit that was rotten, it was the illusion of kindness she sold alongside it. I spent the next hour speaking to other residents. Many of them shared similar things. They appreciated the young woman's effort, but they often had to throw some fruit away. A few said nothing at all, only offered shy smiles or silent shrugs. It was the kind of silence that comes from people who've been conditioned to feel grateful for scraps. I left with a knot in my stomach and resolve in my chest. When I got home, I waited for Olivia to leave. As soon as she was gone, I opened the trunk of her car again. This time, I took photos, clear ones, close-ups of black spots on bananas, the mold around peach stems, the shriveled grapes in the corners of the box. I carefully slid one of the fruit bags into my own car for evidence. My hands shook the whole time. Inside the glove compartment, I found something else, a handwritten list. Names, apartment numbers, quantities. At the top, in Olivia's large cursive, was a heading that said, "Blind Center Rotation Priority Week Clients." I sat in the driver's seat staring at those words for what felt like a lifetime. Priority Week clients. My daughter wasn't just careless, she was strategic. She was targeting the ones least likely to complain. I took the list and made a copy on our old printer. I added it to the growing file hidden in my recipe tin. That night over dinner, I tried again. "Olivia, I've been thinking about what you said. About the blind clients." She didn't look up from her phone. "Yeah, I used to visit those people. When you were little, remember, you'd come with me and hand out bread to the residents." She gave a sarcastic chuckle. "Yeah, and they gave you a plaque. Mom the Saint. I just remember how much you used to care." She finally looked at me, annoyed. "People change, Mom. You think I can survive out here handing out free apples? But do you have to survive by stepping on the people who can't even see you coming?" Her fork clanged against the plate. I'm not hurting them, she snapped. They're getting food they otherwise wouldn't. I'm the only one bothering to show up. Is that really all you want to be? The one who shows up with garbage and a fake smile? You don't get it. You never got it. You lived your whole life, paycheck to paycheck, working in that dingy grocery store, and what did it get you? Nothing. It gave me dignity, Olivia. She stood up suddenly, chair scraping back. Well, dignity doesn't pay rent. I'm building something, Mom. A business. A future. At the cost of your soul? She didn't answer. She grabbed her bag and left. When the door slammed shut, the whole house shook, or maybe it was just me. I stood at the sink, staring into the night through the kitchen window. She'd always been stubborn. Always had that edge in her voice when she felt challenged. But this was different. This was decay from the inside out. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was belief. She believed she was doing the right thing. She had rewritten the story in her head so that she was the victim, so that all the people she conned were just stepping stones to her success. And I was the meddling, judgmental mother standing in the way of her empire. But I knew the truth. And I had proof. The question now was, what would I do with it? Because if I acted, I wouldn't just be exposing her scheme. I'd be exposing my own failure as a mother. And maybe the part of myself that looked away for too long. I didn't sleep that night. The hours crawled past, every tick of the clock, reminding me that I was sitting on a truth that could destroy my own daughter, or save the people she was quietly hurting. But the line between justice and betrayal felt razor thin, and I was standing barefoot on it. By morning, I made a decision. I needed to confront her. Not to argue, not to persuade, but to look her in the eyes and ask her one last question that might bring the girl I raised back to me, or finally confirm she was gone. She came home at noon. Shopping bags and hand phone pressed to her ear, sunglasses still on even indoors. She looked like someone else's child, someone from a reality show about ruthless ambition. Olivia, I said quietly. She held up a finger. One sec. Yeah, Mark, tell the photographer I want those shots by Thursday or we're pulling the post. She ended the call and sighed. God, what? I need to talk to you. Without the noise. Just you and me. She gave me a tight, annoyed smile. This again? Yes, I said. This again. I led her into the dining room. No plates, no distractions, just the truth. I placed the copied list of names on the table, the one labeled Priority Week Clients. She glanced at it, then looked back at me with narrowed eyes. You went through my things. You made me, I said. When you stopped telling the truth. She crossed her arms. That list means nothing. It means everything. It means you're targeting the most vulnerable. People who won't speak up. People who trust you. Her jaw clenched. You have no idea how hard I work. You think it's easy keeping a business afloat? You think being a woman in this space is a picnic. I think being human is hard, I said. But that doesn't excuse cruelty. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God. You're acting like I'm selling poison. You're selling betrayal. She sat down finally, a quiet storm brewing in her face. What do you want from me, Mom? You want me to give it all up? Apologize, cry into a camera and say I'm sorry for trying to survive. I want you to see what you've become. She said nothing. So I opened the envelope I had hidden in my sweater. Inside were photos, the trunk full of spoiled fruit, the blackened bananas, the orange with the mildew ring, even the invoice labeled blind drop in her handwriting. I slid them in front of her like a detective placing evidence before a suspect. You documented your cruelty like a brand portfolio, I whispered. Why? She stared at the photos. Her face didn't move, but I saw something flicker: embarrassment, anger, fear. Then she looked up. Her voice came out flat. Because I thought no one would ever question me, least of all you. My throat tightened. Why not me? Because you're you, Mom. You're soft. You forgive. You pretend to be tough, but you always back down. I thought I could count on that. I sat back in the chair. She wasn't just aware of her manipulation. She was counting on mine. That was the moment I knew the daughter I once raised, the girl who used to cry. When a bird hit our window, she was buried deep beneath the woman who now calculated weakness for profit. But still, I asked her one more question. Do you feel proud of this? Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked away. And in that silence, I heard everything I needed to. She didn't feel proud. She felt nothing. I stood, gathered the photos, and walked toward the hallway. Where are you going? She called out. To the community center, I said. To listen. To act. To make things right. She jumped up. You do that, and you'll ruin me. I turned to her slowly. No, Olivia, you already did that. Her face contorted with fury. You'd really choose them over your own daughter. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Really looked, and then said, I'm not choosing between people. I'm choosing between right and wrong, and you've made that decision easier than I ever thought possible. She stared at me, chest rising and falling rapidly. Then she said the words that finally broke the last fragile string between us. Don't think I won't ruin you too. And with that, she stormed upstairs, slamming her door so hard the walls shook. I stood in the hallway, shaking not from fear, but from grief. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the burial of every version of Olivia I had ever believed in. I didn't leave the house for hours after that. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in my hands, watching the shadows shift across the tile floor. The echo of Olivia's words haunted the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Don't think I won't ruin you too. That was my daughter, my only child. The same girl I used to rock to sleep during thunderstorms, humming lullabies until her tiny hand unclenched from the edge of her blanket. The same girl who once cried because a squirrel got hit by a car and made me promise to bury it with flowers. What happened? When did compassion rot into callousness? I raised her alone. Her father walked out when she was 3, leaving behind nothing but a pile of unpaid bills and a void I tried my best to fill. I worked long hours at the grocery store, managing shipments, mopping spills, counting coins to stretch dinners. I couldn't always be there for school plays or field trips, but I was there, every night, every morning. I read to her, cooked her favorite meals, taught her how to tell good fruit from bad, not just in the store, but in life. Check the base of the apple, I'd say. The shine doesn't mean anything if it's bruised on the bottom. She listened, she learned, and now she was using that same knowledge to deceive the very people who couldn't check for themselves. I asked myself the same question over and over. Was I too soft? Or did she always carry this in her, waiting for the world to disappoint her enough to justify it? The shame twisted deeper than any guilt I'd felt in my life. Because this wasn't just about what she was doing, it was about what I'd failed to prevent. But another part of me, the quieter part, whispered that parenting isn't sculpting, it's planting. You nurture, you water, you guide toward the sun. But you can't always control what grows. Sometimes you plant a peach tree and it still bears bitter fruit. That afternoon, I pulled out a cardboard box from the back of the closet. It was labeled Olivia, school stuff. Inside were her old report cards, drawings, birthday cards she'd made me. One caught my eye, a crayon-scrawled note on pink paper. Dear Mommy, you are the best fruit lady in the world. When I grow up, I will help people too. Love, Olivia. I held that note in my lap and felt the tears finally come. She wanted to help people once. Maybe that version of her was still buried somewhere beneath all the ambition and bitterness. But if it was, she'd covered it in too many lies to see daylight. That evening, she came downstairs again. Her face was stony, unreadable. She walked straight to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of juice, and twisted it open without looking at me. I have a right to defend my business, she said unprompted. You go running to that center and you destroy what I built. What you built is a house of cards, I said softly. And you built it on the backs of people who couldn't even see you taking from them. She glared at me but didn't interrupt. You used my lessons, I continued. You took everything I taught you about fruit quality, honesty, value, and turned it into a weapon. You taught me how to survive, she said. And now you're mad I'm better at it than you ever were. It's not survival if someone else has to suffer for it. She scoffed. Oh, please. They're not suffering. They're just not getting Whole Foods level produce. They're lucky anyone even shows up. That's what you tell yourself to sleep at night, I asked. That they're lucky to be lied to. Her mouth tightened. And then, just for a second, the tiniest crack. A flicker of something in her eyes. Regret, conflict. Or maybe the recognition of how far she'd fallen. But it vanished just as quickly. I don't expect you to understand, she muttered. I understand more than you think. I've been poor. I've been overlooked. I've seen the worst of people. And I still chose to be kind. Then you were a fool, she said, and walked away. No slam this time, no shouting. Just that line of blade hidden in a whisper. Then you were a fool. I stayed up late that night staring at the ceiling. Was I a fool for believing that hard work and decency were enough to raise someone right? Or was I a fool for thinking my child's choices were still within my control? By 2 a.m. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about blame anymore. It was about responsibility. If I let this go, if I looked the other way now, I'd be as guilty as she was. I'd be allowing those lies to continue stamped silently with my approval. No mother wants to turn her back on her child. But sometimes not turning away means turning your back on everyone else. And I had a choice to make. The next morning, Olivia went out early off to a networking event, she said. Dressed in her best blazer heels, tapping with confidence, she looked every bit the image of a successful young entrepreneur. If you didn't know what she was doing behind the scenes, you might even admire her. I watched her drive away with a knot in my stomach. Because while she was out spinning her story to the world, I was about to face the ugly version of that story head on. I turned on the local news, and there she was. Olivia Kane, young woman, builds compassionate fruit delivery service for the blind. The segment was only a few minutes long, but it felt like hours. The reporters smiled warmly, calling her an inspiration. Olivia sat in a well-lit room, her makeup perfect, her voice clear, her hands gently folded in her lap. She spoke about bridging the gap between accessibility and nutrition, about empowering overlooked communities, and about making a difference one delivery at a time. I watched as she smiled into the camera, saying, "It's not just about fruit. It's about connection." She even mentioned me. My mom raised me with nothing but love and hard work. She was a grocery store manager I learned from the best. I nearly dropped my mug. The words weren't a tribute. They were a manipulation. She used my name, my sacrifices, as a shield to deflect the truth. I sat there trembling. It was one thing to exploit vulnerable people behind closed doors. It was another to go on television and sell that exploitation as virtue. She was building a brand around a lie and dragging me into it like I was part of her moral compass. That was the final line crossed. I called the center later that day. Doreen answered again. "Hello, this is Margaret Kane. We spoke last week." "Oh yes, of course. Is everything all right?" "No," I said. "But I'd like to come in. Not as a volunteer. As a witness." There was a pause on the line, but only a short one. "We'll be here. Come anytime." I packed the folder I'd been building for days. Printed photos. The client list she labeled weak. Screenshots from her laptop. One of the spoiled fruit bags in a sealed Ziploc. Even the clip from the news segment. I labeled it for Doreen, confidential. I walked into the center with the envelope clutched tightly to my chest like a life raft. The hallway felt colder than usual. Quieter. When I stepped into the staff office, Doreen stood up and gave me a kind smile. I didn't sit. I just placed the envelope on the desk. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. She opened it slowly, pulling out a few pages and scanning the images. Her face shifted from polite curiosity to shocked comprehension. "Is this?" "Yes, it's her. My daughter, Olivia." She sat down heavily, as if the weight of it all had suddenly hit her shoulders. "I had suspicions," she said. "But she was so polished," I finished. She nodded. "We didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. And the residents were too grateful to raise concerns. They didn't want to seem unkind." "I know," I said. And she knew that too. That's why she chose them. We sat in silence for a moment, the file spread open between us like a confession. Doreen looked at me gently. "This must be incredibly difficult." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. "It is. But doing nothing would be worse." She placed her hand over mine. We'll take it from here. We'll handle this properly. I nodded again, stood up, and left before my legs could betray how much I was shaking. Back at home, Olivia returned just after sunset. She walked in with her phone in hand, chattering about how a local charity wanted to collaborate with her. It's such good PR, Mom. I told you this would all work out. Sometimes you just have to trust the process. I stood at the sink rinsing a peach from our own tree. It was perfect. Smooth, firm, fragrant. I turned to her slowly. I saw your interview, I said. She lit up. Right, I was nervous, but I think it went great. You used my name. Well, yeah. It adds authenticity. People love the whole raised by a grocery store mom thing. It's relatable. It's manipulative. She narrowed her eyes. What's your problem now? I'm not your marketing angle. And those people you claim to be helping, they're about to speak up. She froze. What are you talking about? I went to the center, I said. I gave them everything. The blood drained from her face. You didn't. I did. Her voice rose. You reported your own daughter. I protected people you were hurting. She stepped back like she'd been slapped. You've ruined me, she hissed. No, I said. You did that yourself. She stared at me and I saw her walls beginning to crumble, not in regret, but in rage. You think they'll believe you over me, a lonely old woman? I'll say you're confused. That you're jealous. That you made it all up. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. I kept a backup, I said. They have it now. She went silent, and for the first time truly speechless. The truth had cornered her, and there was no script, no performance, no brand she could build her way out of. I turned back to the sink and picked up the peach. Want one? I asked. She didn't answer. She left. No slamming doors, no final threats. Just silence. She didn't come home that night. I sat by the window watching the streetlight flicker outside like it was caught between staying on and giving up. I listened to every car that passed, wondering if it was hers, if she'd turn back to scream, to cry, to deny anything. But nothing. The house was silent except for the soft creak of the ceiling fan above me and the whisper of my own thoughts. Maybe that was the worst part. Not the shouting, not the accusations, but the silence that followed when there was nothing left to argue over. When daylight came, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, her empty chair across from me. I stared at it the way someone stares at a grave. Was this it? Was this how it would end between us? I remembered when she was little, that same chair had been too high for her. She used to kick her legs while sipping chocolate milk, telling me about her dreams of opening a bakery, of helping animals, of being someone who makes people happy. And now she was someone who smiled while handing over bruised fruit to people who couldn't see what they were receiving. Later that day, I went back to the community center, not to spy, not to collect more evidence, but to listen. Word had already spread. Olivia's deliveries had been paused. Her account under review. The staff were now inspecting every donation and reevaluating all their vendor relationships. There was tension in the air, but also a strange lightness, like a bad smell had been lifted. Mr. Clark was in the courtyard sipping tea. He recognized my voice immediately when I greeted him. Well, well, he said. The baker returns. I smiled. How's your fruit today? Fresh, finally. Real peaches. Haven't tasted one that sweet in years. He leaned in. I always knew something was off with that girl. I hesitated. Why didn't you say anything? He gave a soft shrug. She was polite. And we're used to being disappointed. You get old, you get blind, and suddenly people think you're too much trouble. You learn to take what you're given and say thank you. That sentence, so simple, so quietly devastating, stuck with me. You deserved better, I said. He patted my hand. We all do. But sometimes better takes a little time to find us. I sat beside him watching as other residents chatted quietly in the sun, passing around baskets of fresh apples and bananas. Their laughter wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was normal. That's what Olivia had stolen from them, the simple trust that the world wouldn't trick them just because it could. Back at home, the silence continued. Until the next morning. A text lit up my phone at 6:42 a.m. Olivia, I'm coming to get my things. Don't speak to me. That was it. No apology, no anger, just a cold wall where a daughter used to be. I didn't reply. She came while I was out. When I returned, her room was empty. Drawers left open, closet bare. The framed photo of us from her college graduation gone. Only the smallest things were left: a sock, a receipt, a dry mascara tube on the bathroom counter, like a shadow of who she'd been. I stood in her room for a long time. I don't know if I was waiting for her to walk back in, or just trying to make peace with the fact that she wouldn't. That night, Doreen called. "There's something you should know," she said gently. I braced myself. She tried to say it was all your fault, that you were senile, jealous, bitter. I closed my eyes. But the residents didn't believe her. In fact, several of them came forward. Mr. Clark spoke up. A few others too. They told their stories. How they noticed the fruit. How they didn't say anything out of fear or politeness. A long pause. And then one of them said something that stuck with me, what I asked. He said, "Being blind doesn't mean being blind to intentions." I sat down, feeling the weight of those words. "We're not pressing charges," Doreen continued. "Not unless more comes out. But we've cut ties permanently. She won't be welcome here again." I nodded, unable to speak. "I just wanted to thank you," she added, "for doing what was right, even when it hurt." I hung up and walked outside. The peach tree in the backyard had shed some of its fruit. I bent down to pick one up, soft on one side, but still good. I stood there holding it, thinking about the difference between something being bruised and something being spoiled beyond saving. I didn't know what Olivia would become now. I didn't know if this would be her breaking point, or just another twisted lesson she'd bury under charm and reinvention. But I knew what I had done, and I knew that silence, no matter how painful, would have made me complicit. I hadn't ruined her. I'd given her a mirror. What she did with it was no longer in my hands. It had been a week since Olivia left. The house felt quieter than I ever remembered. Not empty, no, not quite, but still. Like something had been removed, and the silence left behind was too heavy to move. Every room held a ghost of her, a lipstick stain on the bathroom mirror, her old slippers tucked behind the bedroom door, a chipped coffee mug she used to call her power cup. I thought I'd feel relief, but what I felt was something more complicated. I missed her, and I hated myself for it. At the community center, I kept volunteering. It felt like the only thing that made sense now. Doreen welcomed me without question. No one spoke about Olivia anymore. They'd moved on with fresh deliveries, new vendors, and an air of caution wrapped in resilience. Still, I could feel it, the quiet scar left by my daughter's deception. It was Mr. Clark who finally brought it up. I was helping organize a donation of plums when he leaned over and said, "She was here again. 2 days ago." My heart dropped. "Olivia." He nodded. "Sat outside in her car. Didn't come in. But I knew it was her. You don't forget voices like that." She was on the phone, arguing, then crying. I clenched my hands around the plastic bag. Did she say anything? No. But she stared for a long time, just watched, then drove off. I swallowed hard. "She's angry," I whispered. "At me." "She's lost," he said. "That's different." That night, I did something I hadn't planned on. I opened her childhood photo album. It had been years since I flipped through those pages, Olivia in overalls holding a watermelon twice her size, her toothy grin framed by missing front teeth, her Halloween costume, where she insisted on being a fruit superhero. I remembered that girl. The one who cried when her friend was bullied. The one who gave her lunch to a boy who forgot his. The one who once told me, "When I grow up, I'll be someone good." I believed her. Maybe that's why the betrayal cut so deep. Because I wasn't just grieving the harm she caused, I was mourning who she promised to be. The next morning, I found a letter on the front step. No postage, no envelope. Just folded paper with my name scribbled in that same teenage script she used when passing notes in school. I hesitated before opening it. Then I read, "Mom, I know what I did was wrong, but you'll never understand why. I needed to win. I needed something of my own. I didn't care who I stepped on because I thought if I could just build something big enough, you'd finally be proud. And now I don't even know who I am anymore. You said I used your name like a shield. Maybe I did. But deep down, I always wanted to be like you, the part of you that never bent even when everything around you did. I don't expect forgiveness. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I needed you to know. I see it now. I see what I became. I'm leaving town for a while. Don't worry, I'm not running. Just trying to figure out how to fix what I broke. Thank you for not staying silent, even if I hated you for it. Olivia, I read it 3 times, then again. And the last time I cried, not the angry, messy tears I'd held in for days, but slow, quiet ones. The kind that come when you're not sure whether something is beginning or ending. A few days later, Mr. Clark handed me something at the center. It was a peach. Fresh, he said with a wink. None of that bruised stuff. I laughed. You're getting picky now. Can you blame me? I bit into it. Sweet, juicy, honest. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, he replied. Thank the ones who see the rot and say something. His words sat with me for a long time. That night, I stood in the backyard and stared at the peach tree. So many of its fruits had fallen, some too early, some spoiled by the sun, others pecked by birds. But still it stood, strong, rooted, growing. Maybe that's what parenting is. You do your best. You plant the seed, tend the soil, pray over the roots. And even when one of the branches bears bitter fruit, you don't burn the tree down. You keep watching, you keep hoping, because someday it might bear sweetness again. The following week, the center was holding an open house, a small event for donors, volunteers, and community members to see the programs in action. I helped set up arranging fresh fruit on display tables, setting out name tags, wiping down folding chairs. Everything was neat, clean, honest. It was the kind of thing Olivia might have once hijacked with flashy banners and fake smiles. But she wasn't here now. And somehow that absence was louder than if she'd stood right in the middle of the room screaming. Doreen asked me to say a few words to the group before the tour began. I hesitated. Are you sure? She smiled. You helped us get here. Speak from the heart. So I did. Nothing fancy, just the truth. I stood beside a basket of ripe oranges and said, My name is Margaret Kane. I used to work in a grocery store and I always believed food tells the truth. You can't fake freshness. You can't hide rot forever. And the same goes for people. There were quiet nods, a few smiles. But when rot hides beneath good intentions, I continued, it's the people who speak up not out of anger, but out of love, that keep the whole orchard from spoiling. That was it. No applause, no standing ovation. Just quiet understanding. That's all I wanted. After the event, Mr. Clark pulled me aside. You know, you sound a lot like a woman who ran a farm I knew growing up. I smiled. Was she tough? Tough as boiled leather, but her fruit never lied. Later that night, I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Olivia, sitting on a bench in what looked like a city park. Her hair was tied back. No makeup, just jeans and a sweater. A bag of groceries sat at her feet. The message simply read, Trying to learn how to start over, one step at a time. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. Because forgiveness isn't always instant. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it never comes all at once, but in small pieces wrapped in the shape of progress. The next day I returned to the peach tree. The last few fruits of the season were hanging heavy on the branches. I plucked one and took a bite. Sweet. Not perfect, a small bruise on the underside, but still sweet. Maybe that's how life works. Not in clean endings or perfect outcomes, but in what remains after the storm, the quiet moments, the unspoiled fruit, the people who stayed, and the ones who walked away trying to change. I sat on the porch and watched the sky turn orange. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had lost a daughter. I felt like I had spoken the truth. And whatever comes next, at least I'll know I didn't stay silent. Olivia didn't contact me again after that last photo. Weeks passed, then a month, and still nothing. There were moments, brief ones, when I'd forget she was gone. I'd be cooking dinner and instinctively set out an extra plate. Or I'd walk past the front door expecting it to swing open with her voice filling the hallway. But then reality would catch up again, and that phantom presence would vanish like breath on glass. Still, life moved forward. It always does. The community center kept me busy delivering groceries, organizing pantry donations, and, more recently, helping train new volunteers. Doreen even gave me a little name badge that said Margaret, Freshness Specialist. It was a joke, but it felt good. It felt like a reclaiming. And then one Friday afternoon, something unexpected happened. I walked into the back storage room to find a cardboard box sitting on the shelf. No label, no note, just a familiar pen mark on the corner. My heart caught. I opened it slowly. Inside were bundles of fruit apples, pears, oranges, all in perfect condition. Fresh, crisp, clean. And tucked beneath the final layer was a receipt. No business name, no markup, just a handwritten note. Donated anonymously. Please inspect before serving. Fresh as promised. I didn't need a signature. I knew Olivia's handwriting anywhere. And suddenly, there it was, the first real gesture of accountability. Not a speech, not a denial. Just action. I said nothing to the others, just nodded and placed the fruit into cold storage. I wanted to believe this meant something, a beginning, a shift. But I knew better than to place all my hope in a single box of oranges. That night I dreamed of her. She was young again, maybe 9 or 10, standing barefoot beneath the peach tree in our backyard, arms outstretched and face tilted toward the sun. She was laughing, holding a fruit in each hand, shouting, "Look, Mommy, these ones are perfect." And I, in the dream, smiled and said, "Just because it looks good doesn't mean it is." She laughed again and took a bite. Then her face twisted and she dropped the peach. Inside it was rotted to the core. I woke up with a start, the image burned into my mind. Dreams have a cruel way of showing you what you're afraid to say aloud, that even when people start to change the damage they've caused, doesn't disappear. It lingers in memory, in reputation, in trust. At the center, things hadn't entirely healed. One resident, Ms. Dolores, still refused to eat any fruit unless I personally selected it for her. "No offense," she'd whisper, "but I've been fooled before." I didn't blame her. It's hard to trust what you can't see, and harder still to forgive the person who took advantage of that blindness, even if they're trying to change. One morning, Doreen pulled me aside. Her expression was serious. "She's here," she said. I didn't have to ask who. I stepped into the hallway and saw Olivia standing outside the main entrance. She looked smaller than I remembered. Less made up, more real. She hadn't seen me yet. She was holding 2 paper bags, one in each arm, and looking uncertainly at the doors as if trying to decide whether to walk in or run away. I stepped outside. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Hi," she said, voice low. "I wasn't sure if you'd be here." "I'm always here," I replied. She gave a dry little laugh. "Yeah, that tracks." A beat of silence passed between us. Then she held out the bags. "I brought produce. Good stuff this time. I've been volunteering at a co-op outside of town. They had extra." I took the bags and peeked inside. Apples. Firm. Bright. Smelled like fall. I nodded. "You can bring them in," I said. "If you want." She hesitated. "Will they let me?" "They're cautious," I said, "but they'll see the fruit. And the gesture. That's a start." She looked down, then back up. "I don't expect anyone to forgive me." "Good," I said, "because forgiveness isn't something you expect. It's something you earn." She nodded slowly. We walked inside together. Some heads turned. Some didn't. Mr. Clark was sitting near the back, reading Braille with his fingertips. He turned toward us, his ears always sharper than anyone else's. "That you, Olivia?" he asked. She froze. But then, to my surprise, she stepped forward. "Yes, sir." He nodded once. "Bring me one of those apples, will you? I'll give you an honest review." She cracked a nervous smile and walked over. I watched her place the apple in his hand, gently, carefully. He held it, turned it over. "Feels firm." "It is," she said. He grinned. "We'll see." Later, he told me it was the best apple he'd had all season. After the visit, Olivia and I sat outside the center on a bench. The sun was setting and the sky glowed orange behind the rooftops. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said quietly. "I just know I can't go back to what I was." "That's enough for now," I said, "knowing what you won't go back to." She looked at me. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "You should." "I don't hate you," I repeated. "But I can't forget what you did." "Not yet. Maybe not ever." She nodded. "I understand." "I hope you do." Another pause. Then she asked, "Do you think I'll ever be someone you're proud of again?" I looked at her, this flawed, lost, searching woman. "I think pride isn't about perfection," I said. "It's about facing what you've broken and choosing not to keep breaking more." She looked down at her hands. "I want to fix things." "Then keep showing up," I said. "With clean fruit. With clean intentions." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd put on a bumper sticker." I chuckled. "Maybe I will." That night, I stood again beneath the peach tree. A soft breeze stirred the leaves. I thought about how long it takes to grow something good. How many seasons? How much pruning? How much patience? And I thought about how easy it is to lose it all. But I also thought about the fruit that comes after the worst harvests, not the first to grow, not the biggest, not the shiniest, but the ones that survive the storm. Olivia wasn't healed, not yet. But she was starting to grow again. And for now, that was enough. The following Saturday, Olivia came to the house for the first time in nearly 2 months. She didn't knock. She just opened the door like she used to, tentatively, like a guest in her own home. I was in the kitchen slicing carrots for soup. She stood in the doorway for a few seconds before finally stepping inside. "I brought coffee," she said, holding out a paper tray with 2 cups. "Your favorite. Extra cream, no sugar." I took the cup. It was warm. So was the gesture. "Thanks," I said. We sat across from each other at the table, neither of us drinking right away. The clock ticked steadily above the fridge, a constant reminder of time and how much we had lost to silence. "I've been working weekends at the co-op," she said. "Loading shipments, cleaning bins, no glamour." "Glamour's overrated," I replied. She laughed quietly. "Yeah, I figured that out." Another pause. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I've been writing letters. To the people I hurt. I haven't sent them. I don't even know if they'd want to read them. But I needed to try." I unfolded the top page. It was addressed to Mr. Clark. "Dear Mr. Clark, I sold you fruit I wouldn't eat myself. I did it with a smile and a lie. And still you welcome me. You trusted me. I betrayed that. I can't undo what I did. But I hope this letter is the first thing I've given you that's honest. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was real." "You should send this," I said. She nodded. "Do you think he'd accept it?" "I think he's more forgiving than most," I said. "But that doesn't mean you should expect anything. That's the cost of truth. Sometimes people won't meet you halfway." "I know," she whispered, "but I have to try." Later that day, we visited the center together. Olivia didn't hide behind me. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. She walked in with the bags of fresh produce she'd picked herself, bruiseless apples, bright oranges, crisp celery, and placed them gently in the kitchen with the others. Doreen noticed her immediately, but didn't react with shock or accusation. Instead, she gave a nod. A cautious one. Professional. Reserved. Olivia took a deep breath and said, "I'm not here to rebuild anything overnight. I just want to help." Quietly. Doreen looked at her for a long moment. "Then start by washing the bins." And that was it. No speeches, no second chances carved in gold. Just a task, a door, open a crack. While Olivia scrubbed plastic crates in the back room, I helped Mr. Clark organize his weekly pantry items. He knew she was there. "She moves different now," he said softly. "Slower, heavier." "She's trying," I said. He tilted his head toward me. "You believe she means it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I believe she's starting to." "That's something," he replied. "Maybe the first real thing." I placed a bright apple into his bag. He held it, turned it in his hands. "Feels good," he said. "Smells right, too." "She picked that one," I told him. He smiled. Well, let's hope it tastes as honest as it feels. When we got home, Olivia stayed for dinner. I made stew. She offered to help chop vegetables, and I let her watching from the corner of my eye as she peeled carrots with the same rhythm I used to teach her when she was little. We didn't talk much while cooking, just shared space. That was enough. But later, over bowls of steaming stew, she spoke up again. Do you think people like me deserve second chances? I looked at her, older now, tired in a way I hadn't seen before, but awake. Deserve? I repeated. I don't know. I think second chances aren't given because someone deserves them. They're given because someone chooses to hope. She blinked slowly. Do you choose that? I'm trying, I said. She nodded. That's fair. After she left that night, I found another letter tucked inside her empty coffee cup on the table. This one was addressed to me. Mom, you didn't fail me. I failed myself. But somewhere deep down, I think I believed you'd always be there to catch me even if I never deserved it. That's why I was angry when you didn't. Not because you betrayed me, but because you finally stopped enabling me. I hated you for telling the truth. Now I'm starting to understand that you told it because you loved me more than I ever deserved at that moment. I don't know if we'll ever get back to where we were, but I want to build something new. Not with lies, not with pity, just with honesty. Thank you for not letting me stay the villain. Love, Olivia. I folded the letter gently and slid it into the recipe tin where I'd once hidden all the evidence against her. Maybe now it could hold something else, not proof of wrongdoing, but the first notes of redemption. In the backyard, the peach tree had started shedding leaves early. Autumn was coming. The wind was cooler now, sharp at night, and the last fruits of the season hung heavy and low. I picked one and took it inside, sliced it open. No rot, just firm golden flesh, sweet. Not perfect, but enough. Maybe that was the point. Redemption doesn't come wrapped in perfection. It comes slowly in bruised hands and handwritten letters and awkward visits to old wounds. It comes through effort, through showing up, through washing bins without complaint. And above all, it comes when the truth, no matter how painful, is finally given the room to grow. It was a gray morning when I received the letter. Not from Olivia this time, but from the center. Official stationery, folded crisply. My name written in careful penmanship on the envelope. I sat at the kitchen table, letting my fingers rest on the paper for a moment before I opened it. Something about the weight of it told me it wasn't just routine. Inside was a letter from Doreen. Dear Margaret, after discussion with the board and based on your continued commitment to this community and your instrumental role in bringing attention to practices that harmed our most vulnerable, we would like to offer you a formal position as Community Outreach Advisor. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. And we think you're exactly the kind of person we want representing our mission. With deep gratitude, Doreen. For a while, I just stared at it. Me, a retired grocery store clerk in her late 50s, who spent half her life cleaning up produce bins and the other half cleaning up after her daughter's moral wreckage. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized maybe I was the right person, because I knew the smell of rot. And I had finally learned how to call it by name. When Olivia came by that afternoon, I told her about the offer. She didn't say much, just smiled. Guess the fruit lady finally got promoted? She teased gently. I'll need help organizing some of the new vendor contacts, I said, watching her closely. Especially someone who knows what not to do when building relationships. She looked down, then back at me. You want my help? I want your effort, I said. Help will come after that. She nodded. That's fair. Over the next few weeks, Olivia began showing up more regularly. Quietly, no fanfare, no selfies, no speeches. She helped carry boxes, filled out forms. She even offered to make calls to past vendors, the ethical ones, to reestablish supply chains. There were still skeptical glances from some of the residents, and I didn't blame them. Forgiveness, after all, doesn't arrive in a single act. It's built the same way a bad reputation is, piece by piece. But the more they saw her showing up not as the smiling fraud they remembered, but as a quieter, steadier version of herself, the more the tension started to thaw. Even Mr. Clark cracked a joke one afternoon. She's finally learning how to hold an apple without squeezing it like a stress ball. Olivia laughed. Guess I've got soft hands. He smirked. Better than a soft head. One Friday, we hosted a small fall harvest celebration at the center's simple food music from a local group and a raffle for donated household goods. Olivia and I worked side by side in the kitchen slicing apples for pie and arranging gift bags. Halfway through the evening, Doreen approached Olivia and said, "There's a vendor outside asking for you. Said she used to work with you, Hannah something." Olivia stiffened. I recognized the name. Hannah was one of the small-scale farmers Olivia had burned during her previous operations, pushing her for bulk at unsustainable prices and then ghosting her payments. "I'll go," Olivia said after a pause. I followed. Outside, Hannah stood next to a crate of pumpkins, her arms crossed. "I didn't come here for drama," she said. "I came to deliver what I promised, Doreen. But when I saw your name on the sign-in sheet..." Olivia didn't flinch. "I know what I did," she said quietly, "and I don't expect you to forget it. But I'm not that person anymore." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," Olivia said. "But I'll keep showing up until maybe one day you do." A long silence passed between them. Then Hannah said, "Well, at least you're not fake smiling anymore. That helps." She turned to me. "Is she working under you now?" "In a way," I said. "More like beside me. But I keep the keys." That got a small laugh out of both of them. Later, after the last of the guests left and we were sweeping up glitter from the hallway, Olivia turned to me and said, "Do you think people can really change, or are we just learning how to hide our worst selves better?" I leaned on the broom handle and looked at her sweat on her forehead. Sleeves rolled up, eyes clearer than I'd seen in a long time. "I think we all have rot inside us," I said. "But we also have the choice to cut it out. Or feed it." She considered that for a moment. "And what if we cut too deep? What if there's nothing left?" "There's always something left," I said. "Even in the worst fruit, there's still a seed." The next day, Olivia brought in a box of hand-labeled jars. "Homemade jam," she said, "peach and apple." She handed one to Mr. Clark. "Want to test my skills?" He sniffed it, then grinned. "Smells better than your last delivery." She laughed. "That bar's not hard to beat." He opened it and took a small taste with the spoon she offered. "Sweet," he said, "real sweet, and honest." She exhaled. And I saw something fall from her shoulders, something that had been there for years. Guilt, maybe. Or the fear that she'd never find her way back from what she'd done. But now here she was, making jam instead of excuses, and being seen not as perfect but as present. That evening we walked home together under the rust-colored sky. The leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the wind carried the scent of wood smoke and distant cider. "You still think I'll mess it all up?" she asked. "I think you'll always be capable of messing up," I said. "But now I think you'll know how to fix it." She nodded. "That's the best I've ever felt about anything." "Good," I said. "That means it's real." We stopped at the edge of the backyard. The peach tree was bare now, branches, thin leaves scattered. But beneath it we'd started turning the soil, making plans, preparing for something new to grow. It was the first week of November when I realized something had shifted, not just in Olivia, but in me. We were at the community center unloading a new shipment of produce bundled up in scarves and gloves against the early frost. The boxes were heavy, and the truck driver had arrived late, but no one complained. There was something warm in the air despite the cold, something that hadn't been there before. Olivia worked quietly beside me, checking each box against the invoice, making sure everything was accounted for. She'd gotten good at the details, not just checking for bruises, but checking people, asking how they were doing, noticing who needed help lifting things, offering rides home when volunteers stayed late. She wasn't loud about it. She didn't announce her changes, but she didn't have to. They showed up in her steadiness, in her presence, in her silence, the kind that wasn't hiding anymore, but holding space. Later that afternoon, as we were wrapping up, Mr. Clark asked if Olivia could walk him to the reading room. He had a cassette he wanted to drop off, and he said her pace matched his better than mine. I watched them go side by side, Olivia's hand lightly resting near his elbow, but not holding, not guiding, just walking with. When she came back, she was quiet. He told me a story, she said, about a boy who used to sell spoiled milk in glass bottles during the war because he figured no one would notice. Until one day, someone got sick. Badly. I nodded. And he said that boy spent the next 30 years making sure no one else ever did. I smiled. Sounds like Mr. Clark knew exactly what he was saying. She nodded, then added, he also said I've got decent jam and a voice like someone who's been punched by life and learned to stop talking back. I laughed. That's a compliment in his world. The next day I got a call from Doreen. There's a situation, she said. A young volunteer, Claire, only 19, had apparently been caught pocketing small items from donation bags, soap, toothpaste, socks. Nothing huge, but still theft. She hadn't confessed, but there were witnesses. It was delicate. Claire came from a difficult background. She'd been quiet, hard-working. This wasn't easy to believe. I want Olivia in the room when we talk to her, Doreen added. I blinked. Olivia. She knows what it's like to fall. Maybe she'll recognize something we won't. When I told Olivia, she didn't hesitate. Okay, she said. Just that. Not defensiveness, not discomfort, just readiness. We sat in the back office with Claire an hour later. The girl looked scared, pale eyes darting, fingers twisting in her lap. She reminded me of Olivia at that age, defiant but fragile, building walls from anything she could find. Doreen explained what had been seen, what had been reported. Claire didn't speak. Then Olivia leaned forward. Her voice was soft. Do you know why I'm here? Claire shook her head. I'm not here to judge you, Olivia said. I'm here because I once thought survival meant taking without asking. I thought if I looked confident, no one would question me. I thought, if no one sees the harm, then there is no harm. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to, she began, then broke off. I know, Olivia said, but now's your chance to say it out loud. To name it. Not to get out of trouble. To stop hiding from the part of yourself that got scared. Claire whispered, I just wanted clean socks. Silence. Then Olivia nodded. Okay, she said. Then let's start there. Claire wasn't fired. Instead, she was offered counseling and a new job organizing the hygiene supplies for distribution, inventory, accountability, trust. It was Olivia's idea. It's not about punishing the fall, she told me later. It's about making the landing softer so there's room to stand back up. I looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't see my daughter as the girl I lost, or the woman who had betrayed others. I saw who she was becoming, and I realized that was someone I could finally be proud of again. A few nights later, Olivia stayed for dinner. It was just the two of us. She peeled the potatoes while I stirred the soup. We talked about boring things, taxes, the heater acting up, whether the co-op was going to renew its bulk contract. But then out of nowhere she asked, what was the worst part for you? I knew what she meant. The scam, the betrayal, the whole ugly chapter we'd clawed our way through. I set the spoon down and leaned on the counter. The worst part, I said slowly, wasn't what you did. She turned toward me. It was realizing I couldn't protect you anymore. Not from the world, not from your choices, not even from yourself. Watching you become someone who could lie to people who trusted you, that was like watching my own heart decay from the inside out. She swallowed hard. I thought you'd never speak to me again. I thought I might not, I admitted. But silence isn't always the answer. She nodded, eyes glassy. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, I said. Just keep showing up. That weekend, we walked together through the neighborhood farmers market. The same vendors Olivia had once manipulated now waved cautiously, some even offered samples. She didn't flinch. She nodded. She smiled. She explained what she was doing now. No excuses, just truth. We passed a small stand run by a woman in her 70s, jars of preserves, handwritten labels, wicker baskets. Want to try my peach chili jam, she asked. Olivia grinned. Absolutely. As we walked away, she said, that's the bar. I want my jam to be that good. Then you'd better keep practicing. She nudged me. I've got the best coach. I smiled. And under the autumn sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because the person beside me, the one who had caused so much pain, was finally walking in the light. And this time she wasn't pretending. Winter arrived in slow, creeping waves, the kind that settles into the bones before it shows up in the forecast. The first frost came early. I woke up one morning to find the last of the peach leaves scattered across the yard like broken promises, their golden edges curled and brittle. Olivia showed up that afternoon in a heavy coat and gloves, her nose red from the cold. "I thought we could prune the tree," she said, holding up gardening shears. "Before it gets worse." I blinked at her. "You want to prune this tree?" She smiled. "I think it deserves better care this year." We worked in silence for a while, moving slowly through the branches, cutting back the dead weight, the tangled limbs that had grown in the wrong directions, the ones that would never bear fruit again. As we worked, our breath clouded the air between us. Her movements were deliberate, careful. She stopped more than once to ask, "Is this one still good?" And I'd either nod or shake my head, watching her internalize the process. "You used to hate this," I said. "Yard work, dirt, sweat." "I used to hate a lot of things," she replied. "Turns out most of it was myself." That caught me off guard. But I didn't say anything. I let the words hang there between us like snowflakes, fragile, rare, melting as quickly as they arrived. After we finished, she helped me store the tools in the shed. We stood for a moment by the door, surrounded by old pots and bags of fertilizer. "Do you remember," she said, "that summer when I was 11, and I snuck one of the peaches to school in my backpack?" I smiled. "The one that burst all over your spelling test?" She laughed. "God, the whole paper smelled like fermentation for a week. My teacher told me I smelled like a winery." "And you told her you were just cultured." We both laughed, but then her face sobered. "I love those peaches," she said. "I used to think they were magic, that they only grew because of you." I looked at her. "They grew because we tended them. Together." She nodded. "I forgot that part." That evening, I made hot cocoa. We sat on the couch under a blanket, watching the old fireplace crackle. "I got offered a job," Olivia said suddenly. I turned to her. "Where?" "At the co-op. Outreach and vendor relations." She shrugged. "It's part-time. Modest pay. But it's honest." I sipped my cocoa. "Do you want it?" "I think I do. Not because it fixes anything, just because it doesn't require pretending." "That's the best reason to take any job," I said. She hesitated, then added, "There's more. They want me to help build a program that teaches young entrepreneurs about ethical sourcing, real training, real accountability." My eyebrows lifted. "They know your history." She smiled wryly. "Oh, they definitely know. And they still offered it. They said that's exactly why they want me. Because I can speak to what happens when you go the wrong way and what it takes to come back." I exhaled slowly. "You should take it. You're not ashamed." I admitted. "But shame is a season. Like winter. It's supposed to pass." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you." The next week, she started officially. I helped her pick out a modest blazer and ironed it in the living room, while she practiced introducing herself in the mirror. "I'm Olivia Kane, and I used to be a fraud." "Wait, no, that's not the opener," she muttered. I chuckled. "Try leading with reformed distributor." She smiled. "I like that. Sounds almost noble." A few days later, Doreen invited us both to a community panel at the center. Topic: restoring trust, stories of growth and accountability. Olivia was nervous. "What if someone throws fruit at me?" "Well," I said, "make sure it's ripe. We'll turn it into jam." She laughed and then surprised me by inviting me to sit beside her on stage. The room was full: volunteers, staff, community members, even a few blind residents. Mr. Clark sat in the front row, his cane propped beside him like a sword. When it was Olivia's turn, she stood up slowly. Her voice was steady. "I used to sell lies disguised as help," she said. "I convinced myself that because people couldn't see the rot, it didn't matter. But rot always reveals itself in time, in pain, in lost trust." She glanced at me, then at Mr. Clark. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I will keep showing up. Because when you plant something bad, you can't just walk away. You have to stay and grow something better next to it." There was no applause, just quiet nods. and in that quiet more truth than any ovation could hold. That night we walked home together under a sky full of stars. "You think I did okay?" she asked. "You were honest," I said. "And you stood still while others looked at you. That takes courage." I was afraid I'd shake. "You did, but you stayed." She took a deep breath. "That's all I can do, right? Stay. Keep showing up." "Exactly." We reached the house. She paused before going inside. "The thing is," she said, "every time I do something good now, it still feels like it's not enough. Like I'm always one step behind where I should have been." I put my hand on her shoulder. "That feeling won't go away overnight. But it means you've changed." She looked at me, eyes shining in the dark. "I want to be better." "You already are." We stepped inside together. The warmth of the house embraced us like a slow forgiveness, not complete but real. And in the kitchen, 2 jars of peach jam sat on the counter, labeled in her careful handwriting. Not perfect, but sweet and honest. Winter settled into the bones of the house quietly but completely. The heater clicked on in the early mornings. I took to wearing thicker socks. Olivia started bringing in firewood before I even asked, stacking it neatly by the hearth like it had always been her job. It was in those small things, the unspoken acts, that I noticed how far she'd come. And how far we both had. The community center held its final gathering of the year, a few days before Christmas, a modest celebration with cocoa cookies and warm scarves for anyone in need. Olivia baked 3 batches of her now famous peach muffins. I brought the last of our homemade jam in a crate with handwritten notes tied to each jar, made with fruit that's seen hard days, but still sweet. From someone who knows. By now, everyone at the center knew what Olivia had done and what she was doing to make it right. No one tiptoed around it anymore. There was no more whispering behind closed doors, only acknowledgement and quiet acceptance. She didn't need to be forgiven to be seen. She just needed to be present. Mr. Clark was sitting in the corner, listening to a recording of his late wife reading poetry. Olivia walked over with a slice of fruitcake and sat next to him, quietly listening. He handed her one of his earbuds halfway through the recording. That image, the 2 of them, heads bowed together, sharing sound instead of words, stayed with me. Because it spoke louder than anything they could say. When we got home that night, Olivia and I made tea and curled up in the living room. The tree in the corner twinkled with soft yellow lights. There were only a few gifts beneath it. We never were big on presents. She sipped her tea and said, "I've been thinking about moving out." I looked over. "Where?" "There's a small apartment above the co-op. It's not much, but it's mine." I nodded. The words stung a little, that ache of something leaving, even if it's right, but it wasn't the same ache as before. This wasn't escape. This was growth. "You're ready," I said. She smiled. "You think so?" "I do. But just because you move out doesn't mean you stop coming back." "I'll come back for jam lessons," she teased. "And pruning," I added. She laughed. Then she grew quiet. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. I didn't have to ask what she meant. "No," I said. Not telling the truth. Not exposing what needed to be exposed. She nodded slowly. "I hated you for it," she whispered. "I know. I don't anymore." "I know that too." A few days later, she packed her things. Not in a flurry, not angrily, just piece by piece. She left the old coffee mug on the counter, took the framed photo of us from her graduation, hugged me 3 times before she got in the car. "I'll be back next weekend," she said. "I'll make stew," I replied. "Make it spicy. I'm growing up, remember?" I smiled. As she drove away, I didn't cry. I just stood in the doorway, the cold air kissing my cheeks, watching her taillights fade around the corner. It felt like watching something bloom, not break. That night, I found one last note tucked inside the recipe tin where the evidence used to be. It was folded neatly with my name on the front. "Mom, I used to think your strength came from being nice. Now I know it came from being honest, even when it meant standing alone. You saved me by not saving me. You gave me a chance to rebuild from something real. I'll never be perfect, but I will be better. Thank you for never giving up on me even when you had every reason to. Love always, Olivia." I folded it slowly and placed it beside the one she wrote to Mr. Clark. A new record not of her lies but of her becoming. Now months later, the first buds have begun to reappear on the peach tree. I walk the yard every morning, tea in hand, touching the limbs, gently checking for growth, for signs of return. It's slow, yes, but it's happening. Because even after the harshest winters, even after pruning away the worst, something good can still rise. That tree doesn't blame me for what fell away. And I don't blame Olivia for who she used to be. We are what we choose after we break. And she is choosing. So am I. I still work at the community center. Olivia stops by once a week with donations, fruit that she now inspects with more care than most people ever will. She trains new volunteers. She teaches them how to identify rot before it spreads, not just in the produce, but in the intentions behind every transaction. She even keeps a small frame on her desk now, a photo of our peach tree. Below it, a quote scribbled in pen. "There is no sweetness without sunlight and truth." She tells people it's an old saying passed down in our family. It's not. She made it up. But I let her believe it, because in a way it's true. And the truth, even when bitter, will always be the root of anything worth growing.